Initially, we'll only keep you 5 minutes over.
Pardon?
I know, we're catching up time. Calvin Rodo works at ESDC. He'll give you more background on the work that he's doing, but has been a strong contributing member to open source in the GC, and also an active participant in our working groups for the Open Source Advisory Board. So with that, he's going to be talking about the tools components.
Okay.
Sort of.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be talking not so much about the tools. I was asked to talk about my experience trying to open source something at ESDC, so I'm going to kind of be focusing more on that. So I've been interested in working on open source since I was first introduced to it in college. Kind of became enamored with this idea of people collaborating together, working in the open for the greater good of everyone, that I was convinced I was going to spend the rest of my career working on this stuff. Then I got a job working in the government in an environment that was pretty much the exact opposite of open source in every single way possible. Teams didn't really collaborate with each other unless they had to. They didn't share their code with each other, and they definitely didn't share their code with the public. So I wasn't exactly living my dream. And then last year, something kind of changed for me. So first I saw an article at CBC about the Communication Security Establishment open sourcing their tool assembly line. And I thought to myself, if CSE can open source something, ESDC can open source something. And then I saw this tweet from Alex Benet. It said that the GC must take an open-first approach to web development using open source tools and create an open culture that co-develops, reuses, and shares. And I read the open-first white paper that was attached to, which I thought was great. And then I read the document that kind of enabled this, which is and I'm going to try and remember the name, the Government of Canada Strategic Plan for Information Management, Information Technology, 2017 to 2021. And there was a set of guiding principles. And principle number 2 was simply titled Open, and underneath that it said GC employees work in the open. And I thought to myself, this is fantastic. I'm finally going to be able to open source something. And then I thought to myself, crap, I don't know how to do this. I was very lucky at the time. I just joined a team where my director had just spent 18 months at Treasury Board, and so he knew the people that had worked on the Open First white paper. And he told me, Calvin, you need to talk to Ashley Cassavan. She's super smart. She's super passionate about open government. She did a lot of the work on the Open First white paper. If anybody can help you figure this out, it's her. So I reached out to Ashley. We chatted back and forth about this a bit, and then she went off and met with her legal team, and they came back to me with an answer for how I can do this, and it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So the answer was basically ask your deputy minister. Now, on the page here I have the 2 parts of the Copyright Act that say all work done by public servants is owned by the Crown, and the Crown is the owner of the copyrighted work is the one who can apply licenses to it. Now, I don't know how it works at other departments, but at ESDC, I pretty much have zero chance to even sit in the corner being quiet in a meeting that the deputy minister's at, let alone get something in front of them that they need to sign off on. So I'd better come up with a pretty compelling reason for why they should put their signature on my request. So this presentation is really about how I kind of crafted my justification for why I should do this. And I've also been told that this presentation shouldn't be technical. It's a little hard to talk about open sourcing code without getting technical. So I'm going to kind of baseline everybody a little bit. So what is source code? It's simply the instructions tell a computer what to do. It's the stuff that makes up the software that we use. And what is open source code? So I've grabbed the definition from the Open Source Initiative. I've kind of just copied and replaced the word software for code and source code in here. For my purposes, there's really no difference between the two. So open source code is source code that can be freely accessed, used, changed, and shared in modified or unmodified form by anyone. Open source code is made by many people and distributed under licenses that comply with the open source definition. Now, I want to put a little caveat here that just because the source code and the software can be changed or modified doesn't mean that there's not governance around this. It doesn't mean that people are just going to be changing our stuff willy-nilly. Because that is a question that I get asked quite a bit when I bring this up to people. So, and then the license I want to apply to my work, it's the MIT license. It's up on the screen in its entirety here. I'm not going to read it out to you guys, but it basically says you can do anything that you want with this software. and it's with the one, it's kind of caveat emptor, it's as is, so there's no warranties for it. If there's a bug in it, you know, you either fix it or you send back the issue to us so that we can fix it. So first I had to figure out why I wanted to work in the open. Well, quite simply, TBS wants us to do it. And I think they actually have a lot of really good reasons for why they want us to do this. And in fact, the next couple of slides, I've kind of just pulled directly from their open source white paper. So the first really good reason is it's transparency. It creates greater transparency and accountability in the work that we do. Increasingly, our lives are kind of being controlled by these algorithms, and it's the same in the government space. And being able to actually see how how legislation is implemented in code, see how these algorithms work, I think it really increases the trust in the work that we're doing. Another good reason is public benefits. So open source really drives innovation and economic opportunities. A lot of companies are built on open source software. A lot of software is built on open source software. People can take the stuff that we're doing and they can sell it back to us. They can improve it. Entire industries are built around this stuff. Excuse me. All right. Well, that's great. Okay. Collaboration leads to lower development costs. So, you know, it encourages, when we put our stuff out in the open, it makes it easier for people to work with us. Other governments can collaborate with us, companies, students, citizens. They can make changes to our source code or provide us with changes to our source code that we can then integrate into our systems. They can let us know about bugs, and they can also help with our documentation. Another thing is its long-term feasibility. So open source software tends to stick around for quite a while. I use a text editor every day called Vim that is been first created in like '96, and it's still supported today, and it's free. You'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of commercial software that has that kind of staying power. And I mean, the government is here for a long time, and our software systems are here for a long time. So working out in the open kind of ensures that our systems are going to be viable into the future. It also builds reputation. So participation in open source software, it can help build a positive reputation amongst other developers and amongst open source users. I know that government developers are doing a lot of cool stuff, and unless we're working in the open, nobody's going to see it. I kind of get sick and tired of people saying like, oh, you work for the government, you guys aren't that great. I'm like, no, we're doing awesome stuff, and we should be letting people know how awesome we are. Another thing, and so this is where I'm kind of deviating from the white paper, open source attracts talent. So company Black Duck Software used to do a Future of Open Source survey every year. They've changed the name since then, but in 2015 they found that 50% of respondents to the survey said that their company's participation in open source software projects helps them find and recruit top talent. And Facebook is open sourcing their stuff because it attracts good people. It's not all altruism. There's solid business sense behind this. Another really, really good reason is companies give away free software and services to support open source software. Developers have realized a long time ago that open source is good for them. It helps them do better work. And so they support this ecosystem by giving away really top quality tools for free to open source projects. You can get everything from version control systems to cloud to development tools, stuff that people pay large amounts of money for, you just get for free by having an open source project. Another, I think, really good reason for the government is it's one less ATIP to worry about. These things can take up a lot of time, and if you're working on an open source project, you've already done the work to make sure that your secret stuff is secret and the stuff that can be shared can be shared. You know, save your future self from having to assess your work for an ATIP request, and save a citizen those $5. You know, we're stewards of public funds. Give it a second. A bit slow. All right. So now that I kind of looked at why I'd want to open source my stuff, you really need to look at why you wouldn't. And there's some good reasons. There's not a lot of good reasons why you wouldn't, but there are some pretty compelling ones. So first off, if your code's considered classified, so anything that's of national security value, obviously you're not going to want to open source. Anything that has any kind of algorithms around fraud detection, you're probably going to want to keep that secret. I mean, security through obscurity is not really a valid justification usually for keeping things secret, but in this case, just that extra little bit of secret on top of what you're doing is good. Now that doesn't mean that if you have a fraud detection algorithm in your system, you shouldn't open other parts of it, just the parts that you want to keep secret. Another reason is if your department wants to make money off of it, and I've been told that not every department has the legal authority to do this. I believe ESDC does not, but some do. And in my research, I found that I believe Environment and Climate Change Canada can make money off of some of their stuff. The National Research Council does. And so I should add that if your department has the authority to do so or plans to get the authority to do so. And why you wouldn't want to do it yet. So I do have an error on here. My wife, who works in the policy world, said it should say unannounced policy, not unreleased, and the same for the others. So if you're working on something that's tied to unannounced policy or an unannounced project or unannounced legislation, don't open source it. Let the politicians get up there and talk about how awesome this thing is, and it's your job to make them look good. It's not your job to steal their thunder, so just wait until it's been announced. And actually that's the reason why I haven't open sourced my stuff yet, is I'm working on a project that's unannounced, and so I'm waiting for that to be announced before I can move forward and open source my stuff. And if you don't open source your stuff or share it to the public, at least share it internally. There's a really cool platform called GC Code that's available inside the government that is there for sharing code between developers. I'm really lazy. I do not want to have to do work that somebody else has done. So if you can get your tech folks to share on there, that would make my job a lot easier. So now that we've talked about why you would and why you wouldn't, we need to talk about what it means to work in the open. And I want to stress that I found that working in the open and working on closed source software, there's no real difference between what you need to do. A lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about applies to closed source software. It's just you can kind of get away with not doing it by saying that you're working on closed source stuff, so there's not as many risks there, but it's just as important that you do all this stuff on closed source as you do on open source. Another second. All right, let's try it again. Okay, so first, because you're working in the open, you're going to want to introduce rigorous security controls. As I mentioned, these are all critical for the software that you have on your internal, that your people are working on inside your department. But it's absolutely critical that you do this when you're open sourcing your stuff. So you're going to want to do stuff like code reviews, both peer and automated. You're going to want to use as much automated tools for scanning your stuff for vulnerabilities and security flaws that you can. You're going to want to use some sort of two-factor authentication for accessing your source code platform. Something like a hardware-based YubiKey is really cool and is really secure. We should be buying those for all of our everybody in the department. Google Authenticator is another good thing. You're also going to want to have, I have a security.md, stands for markdown file. You're going to want to document your security controls, and you're going to want to document how to secure your service so that when people do stand up instances of your stuff, that they do it in a secure way. Another thing, and this I'm gonna stress, we need this for every single system that we have. We need a security disclosure policy. A lot of systems don't have this. It's really important for both closed and open source software. So you need to offer a mechanism for your users to report bugs and issues, and you need to be responsive to these reports. So people love to find flaws in systems, and they love to let people know how smart they are in finding these flaws, and what they'll do if you don't have a way for them to let you know about issues, they're going to write a blog post about it, they're going to publish it, they're going to be like, look at how smart I am, I found this flaw on the Government of Canada's website. So you need to have a way for them to respond to let you know about that, and you need to be responsive to this. It's not enough to just have a GD box where they can send an email and then it's this black hole. You need to communicate with them, let you know that you're working on it and what the status is and when you plan on releasing the fix, because they are going to let everybody know about it. And in fact, I think Microsoft just ran into this issue the other day where somebody let them know about a bug 120 days ago and they didn't patch it, and so they wrote a blog post about it the other day. Another thing is an accidental credential disclosure policy. This is important for internal as well. So systems talk to other systems and they use passwords to validate themselves on that. These passwords get stored can get stored in source code by accident, and it happens all the time. We're all only human, so you need to have some way to like automatically catch that, and then you need to have a policy for like what you do when that happens. If anybody's interested, you can shoot me an email or reach out to me on GC message. I've got a really, I think, pretty good one that's pretty straightforward that I'd be more than happy to share with you. Keeps wanting to update. And I don't got a mouse, so no. Awesome. There we go. I'll just close that. Okay. So you're also going to want to have a contribution policy. As I had mentioned earlier, there is some governance around contributing to this stuff, and so you're going to want to come up with a policy for like how they can contribute, what kind of stuff you're expecting, like the state of the code that they need to give you. This one is a bit one of the more unique ones to the open source world. It's not something we really need to worry about internally. And then most importantly, you're going to want to share it. You're going to want to let people know about it. Share it on the Open Resource Exchange that Guillaume mentioned earlier. And you're going to want to get your department's communications teams to share it. They are dying to let everybody know about all the cool stuff we're doing. And I think this is cool stuff. So let them know, and they can tweet about it or whatever they do. So now that I've kind of talked about what it means to work, so who to engage. So this is more about who I engaged on my side to kind of give my justification a little bit of a more robustness, because I figured if it was just like, yeah, Calvin says you should do this, you want other people, the people that are stakeholders and experts in this different stuff to comment on it as well and to back you up. So these folks, I found they probably have something to add. So first and foremost, I want to point out the intellectual property team at ESDC, which Adrian works for. They were super, super useful. He was super useful in me moving forward with this. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you have to ask your deputy minister to apply a license. And that took me a little bit to find out about. When I talked to Adrian, it took him 5 minutes to be like, oh yeah, that's been delegated down to the Director General. So instantly it became infinitely easier for me to actually open source something. The Director General actually knows my name, whereas I would be very surprised if the DM did. And intellectual property, our IP folks were also really helpful in dealing with legal. Adrian knew exactly who to talk to in the legal space that would help me with the questions that I had. He helped me craft kind of the requests that I sent to them. I've dealt with legal in the past. We speak very different languages, and I was not really looking forward to reaching out to them, and he made it significantly easier for me to have that communication with them. IT security is really important as well. As I mentioned, there's a lot of security implications to the work that you're doing and working in the open, and having your IT security team there to kind of enable you to do it in a secure way is really helpful. And once again, your communications team. And then, so these are people that I reached out to, but at ESDC, they didn't really have a stake in what I was doing. So privacy, they were more concerned about the platform that I was putting it out on, and not so much about actually open sourcing my stuff and the IT asset management. At ESDC, they're more concerned about the software that we're consuming and buying, and not so much about what we're producing, but in other departments it may be different. And so where do I go from here? Well, my next step is to document my justification, get approval from my DG, go out and celebrate, because this has been a bit of work for me, working in a domain that I'm not used to as I'm a developer. And then I want to kind of create a framework for applying an open source license at ESDC. We've got an open source adoption working group that I'm hoping can take the stuff that I've done and come up with a really easy to follow checklist for what you need to do to apply an open source license to your work. So now some contact information for me. You can reach me by email, although I recommend GC message or Twitter, as I'm more active on that, and I'm not the best at getting back to emails. GC message, there's a really big community of people who are interested in open source in the government, and they're really passionate about it, and they love to talk about it. And so it'd be a great place to continue this conversation. And Twitter as well. I'm a strong believer that if we're going to talk about working in the open, we might as well do that in the open as well. So now, any questions? Everybody wants lunch? Yes? Why did I pick that? It's the one that, so it's what CDS has put most of their stuff under. It's what the Web Experience Toolkit is opened under. It's the one that, I don't know, I think it's pretty permissive and pretty open. I know there's a lot of other ones, but it just happened to be the one that we picked. I mean, anything that's kind of approved by the OSIs, I think what is gonna be recommended. And it's also, we looked at what GDS was doing, and it's what they're recommending.
So yeah, we'll come up with guidance on this, and we'll get Calvin to just use his toolkit for everybody. But
that'd be fantastic.
But what the process on that is going to be is anything that's okayed by OSI, then we're going to be okay with. But we recommend MIT code. Not only is there precedence that with that, we use it for the Open Government Portal as well. And then the Open Government License for data and information. But again, we'll come out with this, and that's part of the whole rules discussion.
Just like to add to this. Well, this is really low. Can you guys hear me? So we, like Ashley said, we would recommend any OSI license. That's okay. What we will be working is helping provide a framework to guide what is your end goal to better choose those. So identify some of the key ones that are used in the industry and see what the outcome is with the communities or a corporation participation as well. Thank you.
I would just note, this is a big departure for Treasury Board. So normally we say, this is the standard, you have to use this, and then everybody tries to fit a square peg into a round hole. And so we're really trying to shift away from that in terms of saying, okay, here is the framework and the principles or standards that you need to follow, and then do what works best for your particular project. These are the ones that are pre-vetted and we approve of. And so similar approach that Calvin's saying is that whether you're doing open source or closed source, that you have to go through the appropriate security checks. We want to approach licensing in the same way, and we haven't had consistency on that to this point. So he's pushed us. We just are slow to respond.
Yeah. Yeah?
Just one thing on security disclosure. A lot of organizations, including some U.S. government departments, are doing a bug bounty program. So they're actually giving rewards to people who report security bugs. And this is a way to encourage people to actually look at the code that might not otherwise bother. So something we might want to consider in the Government of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ross from Statistics Canada. I know you haven't released your open source software yet, but I was wondering when you do, how you plan on doing that, if on GitHub you'll have created an organization for ESDC or some other platform.
So we have a GitHub organization for my team, and we're just gonna provide it through that. We're gonna open it up, make it public, and then we're going to put in a pull request for the Open Resource Exchange and let everybody know.
Okay, and I was wondering if anyone from TBS could speak to if that's the plan going forward for departments to have their own organizations, or I guess you had on GitHub, there's a Canada CA platform. So if it's going to be a department by department, or just kind of people do as they will.
Project by project, yeah, is how it's been organized up to this point. If you guys have feedback on how you would want it organized, what we're finding though is that across. Sorry, I really need a microphone. What we're finding is that there's a lot of that's why we did so actually no, I know the answer to this. No, we're not going to do that because we identified that there's particular domains of where people are doing open source. And so whether you're doing a CMS in StatsCan or a TBS or at Environment Canada or ESDC, there's a community around developers that are working on CMS, or specifically you could have one that's Drupal or Python. And so that's what we're trying to figure out, or what are those domains that cut across all of the departments, and instead of thinking about departments as those silos. That said, we're following the same metadata schema because it's important to be able to organize that for search purposes. So it then indicates what department that comes from. So the search you could search by department per project if you're trying to find that. But that's reliant on the metadata as opposed to organizing via department and agency. And so we really want to foster that connection between subject matter experts across the government.
And I'd like to add that we just picked GitHub because we liked it. I mean, the platform that we shared on, I don't really care. I just want to open source something. Preferably pick a platform that kind of fosters collaboration like GitHub or one of the other version control platforms that are out there. But I would have been just as happy if it was just email us and I'll give you the code. I just wanted to open source something. But don't do that. But I think the platform's not as important as actually doing it. Yeah.
It's just on GC message. But
I think
it's a good point. So we're platform agnostic on these things, similar to license agnostic, but we want to use one that follows these principles, like being able to share and foster it. But that's why it's important that for us that everything's able to be searched, and why eventually we want to be able to connect the Open Resource Exchange to the in-government portal or any other sort of internal data sharing. So we're thinking about how we architect that right now. Yeah.
That's going to be the last question, please.
Hello, Manolo from Statistics Canada as well. Thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering, right now, I know ESDC is working with machine learning, and from what I've spoken with some colleagues, they have this issue of getting software approved. For instance, getting Python, getting R, getting libraries. So I don't know if any of the folks from TBS could elaborate more what's going to be allowed and what is the time frame if I want to, for instance, explore JavaScript and D3. Would I be able to do that, or other languages as well, like Julia and so on? Thank you.
So what we're finding is that, I'll just talk. So what we're finding is that there's a lot of overlap between different projects and activities that are underway within the government. So we're dealing with that through the data strategy. So it actually today just went to the clerk. So we can share out the link to the data strategy, but part of that it's a report, or it's a roadmap for how we'll do and manage data moving forward. And in that speaks to the data tools, the tools that we need to do our job, both from an open perspective is definitely embedded in that, because as Mark mentioned this morning and come up a few times, digital standards are now addressing the fact that we need to be working in the open by default and designing with the user in mind. And so these things are all kind of converging. So it might seem like an unlikely place to address that, but that is where we're addressing the need for people to have tools, access to the tools that they need to do their job, and those have been identified as part of that process. That said, a specific timeline around it, I can't remember off the top of my head if we put one on tools, but there's activities in there that are addressing next steps and actions starting fall right now up until a year from now on how we can address the tools specifically. So the idea with that is to get greater access faster. So we're working through that ourselves. I'm experienced that just for organizing this, not getting Python in time. So we're trying to push on that quite quickly.
Yeah, and as someone who works at ESDC and has dealt with the IT asset management team, I feel the pain of the machine learning folks, the CDO at ESDC. I can tell you that as a department, we're coming up with a way to deal with the need for more experimentation and tools. Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, so these things all come together. Sorry, one more question. I know you guys.
Well, it's more a comment, actually. So I work at Environment and Climate Change Canada, and we've been developing a lot of software with the huge numerical clusters for computation and such. And we've been using GitLab a lot, so I just say it's very a good thing because we can install our own instances, and we've been working a lot with that. It's working great. And with respect to what you just said, with how to explore new tools and such, we've been using Linux stations for a while there, and it's a really, really a good thing. So because we can install our own stuff, we can play with them, we can check what's the best solution. And I would just want to say that it really makes a difference to have access to these Linux stations for our work, and just so that it's understood from up there that it's a huge thing for us to be able to use these tools and to explore.
Fun fact, you guys, Canada just joined the Linux Foundation thanks to Guillaume. Yeah. So, yeah, it's such an important point. As you can see, we're trying to tackle these things on all the fronts. That's why I wanted to make the point around that's in the data strategy. We are doing that, and that's why under my portfolio we have data, open source, and disruptive technology. So everything AI. So we're thinking about how all of those things fit together and what are the right rules and procedures we need to put in place from a central agency perspective. So happy to chat about any of those things, but we'll let you go for lunch now. Sorry for keeping you longer. Again, food trucks outside, and wanted to say thanks to the School of Public Service. Anna's here from there. They've been doing the webcast for us so everybody else can see what's happening. Thanks. Thanks, Calvin.
Thanks. Yeah, how do I?